My name is Jaden Barnhart.
I'm D. Smith.
I'm Evan Byers, and our topic is gun control. We're now open for questions.
Jump off with the obvious question. What are we controlling? What guns are we controlling? Why are we doing it? Give me a little synopsis of your topic here.
So we kind of focused on the government's regulation of the guns we're able to buy, how we're able to buy guns, and the process as to how difficult it is for us to buy guns. And like we focused on their, like the government trying to keep us, like trying to make it more difficult for us to buy guns and trying to keep guns out of the hands of civilians.
Trying to make it more difficult for us to buy guns just for fun, or
Just buy guns in general, like, just for the individual to buy a gun, making it more difficult for everyone to buy guns.
why are they making it more difficult for people to buy guns?
We're like the large issue in society is that the popular belief now is that guns kill people, and so many people are trying to regulate how we buy guns, and I'm personally against that. I'm not an advocate of gun control.
Well, that leads to the open question then. D, Evan, are you guys for or against gun control?
I'm definitely against gun control. I think our Second Amendment right states that we have the right to bear arms, whether it be from a handgun to an assault rifle, anything. I don't think there's any specific in the Constitution where it says that we can't have an assault rifle or anything like that, which is a big hot topic. It's about high capacity magazines, stuff like that, but I think we have the right to own it.
D?
I'm in the middle of it. I feel that we should have gun control for like the mass shootings that there have been in the world, but at the same time, I feel like we should have guns for our home protection and our home safety, say, in our homes. So yes, I'm in the middle of it.
So D, are you saying that you would limit the types of guns available to civilians?
I would say I would limit it, yes, because there is certain like high-powered guns that kids can get. That's what's being used in most of the mass shootings, school shootings, church shootings in the world. So yes, I would.
Guys, what are your thoughts on that? So for example, like saying like for home protection, handguns and shotguns, but assault rifles, maybe we ban those. What are your thoughts?
I'm highly against that.
Okay.
I'm against that.
And rationale behind being against that?
I mean, I just feel like under the Second Amendment, we have the right to bear arms. It doesn't restrict what we're able to own. And I feel like we should be able to own whatever we feel like is necessary to protect ourselves. And the fact that those high-powered rifles are, like, say on the black market that criminals can buy, if a criminal breaks in your house with that high-powered firearm and you don't have a high-powered firearm to counter that, then you're at a disadvantage yourself. So I feel like it's good to have that option because you're obviously not forced to purchase that weapon. I feel like you should just purchase whatever you feel is necessary to protect your family and your home.
Okay. Do you see a domino effect? If we were to say, hey, listen, these guns we will sell to civilians, and then these guns are off the market, is there a potential domino effect
Absolutely.
to that?
Yeah, I feel like regulating any kind of gun, so like first say banning assault weapons or high-powered rifles. The fact that like if that's able to go through, the fact that they're able to control one type of gun opens the door for them to control everything else for our weapons.
And for like, as far as the argument for assault rifles, I mean, if you look at the statistics, only 4% of the deaths in the past 10 years have been from assault rifles. So I don't think that has anything to affect. Yes, it might have to do with mass shootings, but along with those mass shootings, 84% of people in the past 4 years in these mass shootings have had mental illness. So I don't think it's anything effect on these high-powered assault weapons. And I think that we should have them as like a defense because, you know, this whole Second Amendment isn't for like duck hunters or anything. It's to prevent tyranny. And if our government starts to practice tyrannical powers and stuff like that, who's going to stand up against the federal government? The National Guard. I mean, the National Guard can be federalized by the president at any time. That becomes where the citizens are our own state's militia. And I mean, we have people in the Army who are shooting M16, which is basically an AR-15, but it's full auto. So I mean, we have a variation as far as the AR-15 to at least defend ourselves against, you know, the Army.
So I'd like to jump in with a couple of questions, perhaps as maybe devil's advocate here. So I hear you guys saying, to varying degrees that, you know, the reason that we shouldn't limit gun control is the Second Amendment, which, you know, says the government shall not restrict the right to bear arms. And I hear you making kind of an argument that says, well, we shouldn't start with some things because that leads to a slippery slope of, you know, then the next thing, and pretty soon we're banning everything. And that the purpose is to prevent, to allow the citizens to resist, you know, government overreach or tyranny and that sort of thing. Does that mean then that citizens should be allowed to buy bazookas, tanks? If Jeff Bezos says, I've got billions of dollars, I want to buy some nuclear weapons, how do you fit those under the Second Amendment?
I mean, right now, like, you can't, like, they already made that rule, like, you can't buy that, like, you can't, like, buy a full auto gun right now, I mean, it's already passed. I think that those, like, as far as nuclear weapons, shouldn't be in the hands of just a regular U.S. citizen. I mean,
Not restricting the right to bear arms?
I wouldn't really say a tank is an arm or a nuclear weapon. I would say, like, a firearm.
Isn't the arms race about the nuclear weapon?
So, but I personally don't think we should have nuclear weapons.
Me either. A bazooka in your home, that's weird.
Okay. Well, then let me ask, where do you draw the line? If we're drawing a line somewhere, what factors do you think about where we're going to draw the line?
Well, I feel like we've already somewhat drawn a line. Like, there's a level of weapon and technology that we've kind of set aside as being set for our military. And if a civilian wants to go out and purchase that, you got to have a permit. You got to go through like a lengthy process to get a hold of that technology. And so we've kind of drawn a line between our military has these weapons, and our civilians are going to have a variant of that, but not the same power that they have. So I feel like that's where we've kind of already drawn the line.
But then how can we defend ourselves against the government that has those weapons? Because I think Evan said that one of the purposes of the Second Amendment was so that we can rise up should there be.
And that's where it becomes difficult, is that they have those high-powered weapons, and we have a variant of that as to defend ourselves, whereas theirs is more powerful. But at the same time, I don't think people would want regular civilians to have military-powered weapons, because we don't have the training that the military has to handle.
How can Evan effectively defend us against the government if he can't have the same weapon that the government can have?
That trigger finger's pretty quick.
Your shirt is not lost on me, by the way. So we can't defend ourselves against the government. So even though we have the right to bear arms, they have the right to bear bigger arms?
I mean, if you like looking, if we were to go into a tyrannical situation,
Okay.
I think the president would first deploy National Guard. I don't think National Guard has like nuclear weapons. So, I mean, they do have M16s as far as that, but you're gonna still have to defend yourself with that. And I think you have a better of a chance with an assault rifle than you have a handgun. I mean, it's just.
I think you said that, or somebody said that our rights emanate from the Second Amendment, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'd just like to ask you a question or two about that. Some constitutional scholars have projected or surmised that the Second Amendment, all the different clauses that are in the Second Amendment divided by those commas, that there are two justification clauses followed by two operational clauses. A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, the right of people to keep and bear arms, comma, shall not be infringed, right? So the first two clauses being what they call justification clauses and the second two being operational. Do you think, at the time that that was written, do you think that all those things still have meaning in today's society in the same way that they were intended to?
I think so, and I mean, I think it's a little different. Like, at the time that was written, we'd just come from Britain, and it was a whole lot more realistic that the government was going to take over, and we wanted to defend ourselves from tyranny. And today, it seems a little far-fetched that, I mean, to some people, it's not that far-fetched, but the government and the people, like, the people don't feel threatened by the government every day, but we still have, I feel like we still have the right to defend ourselves, say the government does attempt to become a tyranny.
I expect in your research, you probably saw a lot of controversy over the interpretation
Yeah.
of the Second Amendment,
Yes, sir.
right? Do you think if those clauses were reversed in any order, that the whole thing would still have the same, basically the same meaning? If you took those and just rearranged the clauses, those, and I'm not sure whether you consider, I know we're in an English class, dependent or independent clauses, but if you rearrange those, would they still mean the same thing?
I mean, if you put like shall not be infringed in the very first part, like I don't think that's gonna make sense. So I think it does, the order does.
Well, let's say you just added a connected word such as that or and or you know, something like that. And you might say, start with the right of the people to keep and bear arms, which a lot of people actually wish that the Second Amendment had been written in some other way, because there's some discord about what is the real meaning of the Second Amendment. And I was just curious about your thoughts on that.
I think if it was rearranged a little bit and maybe easier to understand, we'd have maybe a little bit less controversy over it because it is kind of written in a hard.
What about the militia part? Because that's in the, you know, the so-called justification clause, that the very first words are a well-regulated militia. What does that mean to you all based on your research?
Well,
Who's the militia, or what was the militia?
the militia is, as I see it, it's almost like a group of citizens that come together and in a way kind of form their own military ranks, and it's like their group of people which they trust to defend themselves and their community. And today it's not very popular. Like, there's not very many militias today that you'll find, and we still have the right to do that. And some people take advantage of it, not very many people do.
So should we just ignore that part today?
I mean, I don't think we should ignore it. I mean, I think it's still a right that we have, and we've just kind of gone away from it. Not very many people do it, but we still have the right to do that.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take a little bit of a different turn. What's the process currently right now to own a gun?
Okay, so if you were to go into Buzz Gun Shop right now and purchase a firearm, you would go in there, you would pick out your gun, you'd fill out a background check, so you just everything, social security number then, and then they're gonna take it and they're gonna put you through a database for like a instant background check, and it should take around no more than 2 minutes, and it will come up on like whether you're a convicted felon or anything, and it should show like your past criminal record and if you're able to have a gun or not. So in Kentucky, you don't have to have it registered, but if you buy it at like a place with FFL, which is the Federal Firearms License, they're gonna register it under your name, but that doesn't prevent you from buying it from an individual where you want to register it without any background check or anything, because the state of Kentucky doesn't require you to do that.
Do you, what's your all's thoughts on that compared to, I know we've talked about right to bear arms, isn't that part of like the process of not allowing you to have the right to bear arms if you have to go through a background check?
Yeah, well, Kentucky's one of the more lenient states in the United States, and I feel like, personally, making it, like, having a background check and making sure that that individual is safe and, like, should have a gun, I see no problem with that. I see a problem when you're, like, restricting when you're restricting the citizen's ability to go purchase a gun. Like, if the decisions you've made and your criminal history and all that stuff is what's restricting you from buying a gun, then that's your own fault. But if the government's gone in and told everyone that you're not allowed to have this gun, I feel like that's an infringement of our rights.
What do you think, dude?
I agree on what Jaden said. I feel like if you do have a criminal past, that you, in law, in the state, like right now, if you do have a criminal past, you cannot have a handgun. But if you are a law-abiding citizen, like I said earlier, for your own safety, I feel like you should have your own gun at home, on you, and just with you.
So, we talked a little bit about Kentucky. What's, I guess you'd say, the most strict process that you've seen so far?
Well, I researched Chicago, and Chicago's got a pretty strict. So in Chicago, you first have to submit a firearm owner identification card, which you can only get through the Illinois State Police. So it's issued through the state police. Then you have to complete a firearm safety course. Then you apply for a Chicago firearms permit. Then you have to purchase the firearm. There's a $5 background check once you purchase the firearm. And then you have to register the firearm within 5 business days. And if you don't register it within 5 business days, then it becomes an illegal firearm.
So between that and Kentucky, which one do you side with? Are you guys more in the middle? Is there something more in the middle? Should we be less lenient on it? What do you guys think?
I mean, I would side with Kentucky just in the past weekend, like the deadliest weekend in Chicago. There was 52 people shot, 8 of them fatally wounded, 2 of them were stabbed to death, and Chicago officers seized 92 illegal firearms just one weekend. So, I mean, if we keep on restricting these guns, there's going to be guns still there. They're just going to be obtained illegally.
And that stood out to me because even in Chicago with that lengthy process that I went through talking about how to get a firearm in Chicago, they still seized 92 illegal firearms in one weekend. So even if we implement stricter, like making it more difficult for individuals to buy firearms, criminals are gonna go around that. So that's my biggest issue with gun control, is that taking firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens puts them at a disadvantage, because the criminals who we have firearms to protect ourselves against are criminals because they don't follow the law. And they're gonna find a way around the gun control laws to get these illegal firearms, and taking guns out of the hands of our law-abiding citizens puts us at a severe disadvantage.
Talking about a little bit about concealed carry then, especially here in Kentucky, where they just now open it up to you don't need a concealed carry license. What's your all thoughts on that?
I think it can be good and bad. Just as a matter of reason, maybe some people aren't educated, because in that class you are taking like a 3-hour course with a training and a shooting range. They're required to be able to at least hit a target within like a certain diameter. But I mean, we talked to Officer Hart, which is our school officer here, and he said he's with over 20 years of experience in the police force. He's very against gun control, and his thoughts on the no permit to concealed carries, he supports this because in any situation as an officer, they have to assume that they're armed. So there is no problem if they're of legal age and responsible. So he's always has to assume that somebody has a firearm. So it says it really doesn't really change a whole lot for them as police officers. So
this change in this concealing carry, and I have a concealing carry permit. It was permitted before the law changed. I'm neither concealing nor carrying currently, just in case Coach Callaway's around here somewhere. Before that, you had to have a permit in order to carry a firearm in Kentucky. Is that true?
In order to carry concealed, open carry was legal in
Okay.
Kentucky. So.
Okay, so you can still open carry.
Yes.
So we just talked about, Evan, you just made the argument that the concealing carry was good because you had to be trained to use that firearm, right? There was some level of aptitude that you had to show in order to carry the firearm. But I can still carry a firearm regardless of whether that law was in place or not, because I could do what again? What was it called?
Open carry.
Open carry. What's open carry?
So open carry means that you're carrying the weapon, but it's visible to the public. So, for example, like a hip holster,
Okay.
if it's mounted to your belt and the gun's open so that other people can see it, that's legal. The concealed carry is what's illegal, because they don't want people like going into a public place or a restaurant with a concealed weapon that people don't know about. They want to be able to see the weapon and see the threat. So if there is a threat, they want to be able to see.
So regardless of the concealing carry, I can still carry a firearm as long as I'm legal to own one and have purchased it legally. I could just walk around with it. Is that
and at
correct?
age of 18.
And I'm sorry?
At age 18, you can do that.
Oh, trust me, I'm past 18. Let's talk about the kind of firearms that I can carry then, concealing carry or not. What kind of firearms? Can I walk around with that bazooka we talked about earlier? Can I walk around with my tactical nuclear weapon?
I mean,
I don't have one.
yeah. I mean, it's illegal for you. Any like legal gun that you own, you can open carry. You can go around downtown Lexington with an AR-15 on your back, and it's perfectly legal.
You'll get the cops called on you, but it's legal.
I was gonna say, is that a fantastic idea? What do you think, I'm walking around my AR-15 downtown?
I think,
that's a bad
it's
idea.
crazy.
Yeah.
I think somebody will end up calling the cops to steal
Okay.
this high-powered gun,
Okay.
and then people just looking at you like, why are you walking around? Even though it's like, you can, they're gonna wonder, what is the point of it?
It causes very high suspicion.
When people do